You're going to start with a complete circle, and this is my fabric folded in half. You can check out my video on how to make a circle skirt. The only difference is when you get to this corner here where you're cutting out the skirt, you won't cut this. It will stay intact. Just find the center point, and my circle is 60 inches in diameter. So here's my center, so I'm going to just put a little chalk mark right there because I'm going to open it up because we're going to work on one side. Here's my little marking where I have my chalk mark. So after finding your center point, now that we know the back is measuring 14 inches, so I'm going to take my measuring tape and I'm going to measure 7 inches out. And I think I'm going to do mine a little bit longer. So I'm going to make mine 15 instead of 14. So I'm going to measure, put my little mark at 7.5 inches that way. And I'm going to do 7.5 inches on the other way. So now we got our marks of 7.5 inches. So now you want to measure for the armhole. The armhole measurement that I'm using is a 12. Here's my center point. Here's my 7.5, and here's my 7.5. So this is going to be the line for going across the back. Now you want to make the line for the armhole. Since my armhole is 12 inches, this mark at the 7.5, I'm going to do 6 inches on each side since I want 12. So I'm going to put a mark right there and then just stretch this on out and put the mark at the 12. So that lets me know that these are my armhole measurements, and I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. You end up with a big H. You got your armholes here and you got the back here. We want to cut the slit for the armhole. So I'm just going to pick the fabric up like this and put a little slit in it. And now that I've got the slit, I can cut straight to that armhole and then turn it around and cut the other way. So that gives us the opening for the slit. Now that our armhole slits are done, and I tried mine on for size, and I cut it off about 5 inches because it's a little bit longer than I liked it. Because like I said, I had 60-inch wide fabric, but if I had 45-inch wide fabric, it would have just been perfect. What we're going to do for the armholes is you want to make some seam binding, and you want to take your seam binding and you want to bind up the edges. And I'm going to sew it right sides together, starting from one end. And I'm just sewing a simple 1/4 inch seam allowance. And I'm just matching up my seam binding, sewing it and attaching it to the opening of my slit. When you get to the corner, you're going to sew, put your needle down, pick up your presser foot, turn your fabric, and then continue on. That way you won't get that little bulge that you get right there in the corner. I'm going to cut the excess off. Okay, what I'm going to do now is I don't want a whole lot of bulk, so I'm going to slant one side. So I've got that side slanted. To slant the other side, simply turn it over like you're going to lay them on top of each other. And that tells you which way to slant the other side. So I'm going to slant the other side going this way. And now when you put them together, they'll sew without all the extra bulk. So we'll sew those together. Okay, now that I got those sewed together, now I have one continuous seam. Here is the armhole, and there where I've added the facing. So now you're going to turn in the facing once and turn it in again. And you're going to pin this all the way around because you're going to sew this from the right side, and that way the facing will get caught up into the stitching. And where you've joined your seams together to finish up your facing, on the inside you want to make sure you butterfly those out so everything lays nice and flat. So now I've got the facing pinned in place. So now I'm going to stitch in the ditch. This is pretty much what it looks like. Now, if you notice, it kind of comes up around at the top here and at the bottom. I'm going to show you a trick to make these lay down because I want this nice and smooth on the outside. So you're going to flip it over. On the wrong side, you're going to stick this up on the corner, and you're going to fold it in half, and you're going to start right at that stitching, and you're going to stitch across just like that. And I'll show you what it looks like when it's done. And when you stitch across, then therefore your seam kind of stays inside rather than sticking out on the top. And see, this is what the miters look like once they've been pressed down flat, and it gives it a nice clean finished edge for your armholes. So now we're done with that. All you have to do is do your finishing. I'm going to do a roll stitch. So I'm going to roll stitch my seam, and you can check out my video on how to do the roll stitch. See, it turned out really nice. It's a very nice hem. It's rolled on both sides. It's all finished. Here's my finished circle jacket. This is the back view of our jacket. So I hope this tutorial on how to make a circle jacket was helpful for you. On our next episode of Sewing with Niler, join me as I sew a matching circle top that can be worn without the jacket. This top will be a welcomed match to our three-piece ensemble. So, stick around. Happy sewing!